where we have a multi-year study going on right now to do CCTV throughout quadrants within the city. Currently, we just recently had Pipe Tech complete Phase 3, and now we wanted to move to Phase 4, the southwest quadrant, as shown on the map here. As a continuation to the low bidder, Pipe Tech has now submitted a change order to continue on with this next phase, utilizing last year's pricing structure with some increases. They have offered a quote for $47,833.71, and this can be purchased out of this year's water sewer professional services account number 592-557-801 for budget year 21-22. In addition to this quote for the CCTV, Pipe Tech has also furnished us with the quote to offer some CIPP repairs. There are price breaks per repair based on the number of repairs that are made. Within the department, I've met with the foreman and the ops and maintenance supervisor. We've gone over and discussed the areas that we think are the highest priority, these first two quadrants that were CCTV'd. Came up with 14 repairs. That would bring the total to $33,000 for that. So there's two separate items here to be purchased. These repairs can be purchased using the following account, 592-550-930, repairs and maintenance. This would be a significant savings to the option of open cut repairs to this many sections of the sanitary lines. Pipe Tech will be notified upon approval of City Council that they can begin Phase 4 and also the repairs to Phases 1 and 2 prior to July 1 of this budget year.
Councilmember Kivel, go ahead.
We've been waiting for a long time for this to come, so we're in the throes of taking care of this business. I think it's really important that we move forward, and I'd like to award the Phase 4 of the sanitary sewer evaluation study to Pipe Tech Infrastructure for the amount of $47,833.71 for the for CCTV. Phase 4 under line item 592-557-801, and 14 repairs to sanitary sewer under line 592-550-930.
I'll second.
We have a motion by Councilmember Kivel, supported by Councilmember Kennedy. Do we have any further discussion? City Clerk Deaton, could you please lead us in a roll call vote?
Hanson?
Yes.
Bill?
Yes.
Kennedy?
Yes.
Fritzwater?
Yes.
Oger?
Yes.
Kivel?
Yes.
Pelkey?
Yes. Thank you. Motion passes. New business number 5 this evening, unsolicited written materials.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, it's been brought to my attention regarding bringing something like this to put on the books regarding the ordinance relating to receiving unsolicited written materials, specifically to regulate delivery of those materials. We've attached some example ordinance relating to unsolicited written materials drafted by our law firm with the city that are on the books within other communities. Possible course of actions tonight is to review the materials and advise staff on whether the city should create an ordinance specifically for the city of South Lyon addressing the above. Additionally, addressing the other items that they feel should be in such an ordinance. And that's open tonight as far as discussion before we proceed with drafting an ordinance. City attorney's here, and as well as I, to help answer any questions anybody may have. We started to research some of these items, and I think some of these things will be discussed tonight.
Okay. Councilmember Kivel, go ahead.
Well, I mean, if it's a chronic circumstance, it would be nice for us to have some vehicle legally to be able to impose ourselves on people that are doing this. I don't know that it's going to end up being something that blows up people's neighborhoods, but at least we would have some legal way to address them. And I can't help but think that the publishers of these things, if they're getting jammed up in court because of this kind of thing, they're likely to end up being a little bit more mindful of who's doing the delivering and whether or not they're doing it in a way that's commensurate with the way a city would like to see that happen. You know, a responsible way to put it in mailboxes or some other thing rather than just tossing it out in front of a house. So.
No, I agree. If I may, City Attorney Hamame, would you mind coming up and speaking on what it is you're concerned about this, or what it is you're looking for from us tonight? Thank you, I appreciate that.
I'm not looking for anything.
Okay. I know.
We were asked by Paul to put together, whether we've addressed this issue in my law firm, and I said yes. In fact, my law firm drafted a couple of ordinances for some communities, and so I was asked to provide copies of it. I personally didn't draft it. Carol Rosati drafted it in my office. She represents, I know, Lyon Township as well, but those are, I think, Wixom and Huntington Woods that were provided. You might remember the litigation that did ensue out in Orion Township, because they did end up going to court, and it was a pretty heated battle that lasted a long time. I never followed up with Chris Barnett to find out the results and what they're doing now. Have you done that?
Yeah, and I spoke with the township supervisor out in Orion. Like she said, it did go to court. It wasn't district court. It wasn't circuit court. It was federal court, because it had to do with violation of the First Amendment rights, not only of freedom of speech, but also freedom of the press. They ended up settling. Their first avenue was to look at this was regarding delivery and just considering litter. But the courts had looked at, what exactly litter is, and I'll try to describe what that said based upon discussions that the attorney and I have had, and we've researched this a little bit more within the last couple days, and I got a call back from the township supervisor actually late on Friday. In the first place, delivery of newspaper would not be litter by definition. A court has ruled, for example, that litter was used as a verb meaning to discard, and in the view of the courts, tossing a new newspaper on a lawn is not the same thing as tossing a hamburger wrapper there. The paper delivered isn't discarding the paper, but intends for somebody to actually read it. And as far as in Orion Township, they had gone through several months or years regarding this whole thing within the courts. And Orion Township, each member of the township board, for example, was had a $5 million lawsuit against them, as well as the city, alleging violations of the freedom of free press for the First Amendment rights. The free press had sought damages for economic losses, attorney fees, and cost of the interruption of business. And then we found out that this was not only just generally as far as within the state of Michigan. We found it was also in Alabama and Connecticut and New Jersey, New York, Rhode Island, Texas, as well as Utah. So we continue to look at some of these things, and some of these decisions are based upon the U.S. Supreme Court's cases that have actually held up. And in 1994, actually, the Wyoming Supreme Court used a similar rationale to strike down restrictions on distributions of this. So this was much more when we started to look in this a little bit more, and after getting the call back from the township supervisor in Orion, that it wasn't just a basic decision just to try to enforce litter. And the final results within the Orion lawsuit that was actually settled, and the judge had them, within a room and asked them to settle it on their own, was that the residents were all provided with a contact number for the company or for the individuals who was actually handling the delivery of those particular items within that jurisdiction. The number was given out, so the residents were able to contact this number individually and tell them, we do not want this paper, but it did leave that up to those individuals who were actually getting them delivered. So that was an important issue, within this particular case. And so they dismissed all the lawsuits. They dismissed, against each individual, board of trustees member, as well as against the township. So that was a settlement that did occur. So right now, that's how they're handling. In other jurisdictions, we did find out that is how that is being handled as well. The one big item that was a concern was who enforces that. So we looked, an ordinance officer has to go out there and actually see this. Unfortunately, sometimes some of these things are actually being delivered at 5 or 6 o'clock in the morning, may not necessarily see who's actually doing it, and there may be several different individuals who are actually delivering it. So if you were going to get somebody on litter, is it actually the newspaper? Is it actually actually the person's in charge? Is it actually the resident that's living there, or the individual drivers also? So there's a lot of things to consider, not that we still can't continue to move forward, but those discussion items just needed to be brought up tonight and need to be discussed with council.
Thank you. That's what I was looking for. I just knew that you guys had been doing some digging around on this. I just wanted us all to hear that before we started getting any further. City Attorney Amame, did you have anything else?
Just to say about the ordinance itself, certainly, we're never going to be able to draft an ordinance that's going to protect you 100% from litigation. All we can do is look at the current state of the law and do the best we can to make your ordinance as defensible as possible. So you go ahead and adopt this ordinance, that doesn't mean you're not going to get sued. That just means we've done the best we can to give you the tools that you're asking us for.
Excellent. Thank you so much for that. Councilmember Kibble, you had something to add?
Yeah, actually, I was kind of curious. I don't get that stuff in my yard, so I don't really know what the content is. Is it ads, or is it actual stories and opinions?
Coupons, store coupons.
Well, how could that be defended by a freedom of speech thing then? If they're giving out coupons? I mean, that's absurd.
No, it's not.
Advertising?
It's advertising.
Councilmember Kurzweil, go ahead.
I did have a couple questions on this. I kind of wanted to start with the section that says unsolicited written materials is any written material delivered to a premises, so any written material. And there's no exceptions there. So if the Girl Scouts wanted to put a flyer out that they're selling Girl Scout cookies on Tuesday, and, they put it in my driveway, would that be considered written material under this ordinance?
Go ahead.
Well, I mean, the ordinance defines written materials, and it talks about where the unsolicited written materials can be placed. And if they are placed in those locations, then no, they're allowed. If they're placed not in those locations, such as in the right-of-way or on your driveway, then correct, that would be a violation.
Okay, so you're regulating where you can put this material.
Yes, as opposed to outright prohibiting it, you want it in in areas that isn't going to disturb the public. So that not in the right-of-way, not on the sidewalk, you want it on the front porch or the other locations that you decide where it's appropriate.
Because most parents sometimes don't want their kids walking on other people's property. I think that's one of the reasons why they put it on the apron of the driveway, because it's an easement. Homeowners have dogs, homeowners have things where kids could trip and fall when they come up to the door, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that there has been an argument, whether or not it has a lot of merit, but an argument that's made that parents don't want their kids on other people's property, but yet at the same time they want to have the ability to communicate information. So there was that. And then it says to attach materials securely to the front door. And I'm not quite sure how you securely attach something to a front door. I know how you can attach something to a doorknob, but to a door itself, do you bring Scotch tape? Do you bring Gorilla Glue? That's just something, I'm just saying, we're talking about this.
These are all things that can be modified at your discretion, where you point out so these are just giving you examples of what other communities have done. This isn't something we're proposing in South Lyon. This is just brought for discussion purposes.
But it's good to talk about them, because then and then here it says between the exterior front door, if one exists and is unlocked. Well, the only way you're going to find out if a door is unlocked is to try to open it. I sure would not advise anybody to walk up to somebody's house and try to open their door to see if the door is unlocked, so you can put something in it. So I don't even know if I agree with that. So that's kind of where I was at a little bit, is I just felt that this was a little bit restrictive in terms of where to put these materials. I did have a problem, I'll go back to it, with defining what these uncensored, unsolicited written materials are. Any written material, because when you go down to F or E, you're talking about a rebuttable presumption, you're talking about a message, an idea, an endorsement. I mean, that's all First Amendment stuff. And when I looked into this, anything with a First Amendment message, you're going to have a hard time defending this ordinance on the basis of litter, because I think what the city manager did mention is a correct reading of some of the protections of First Amendment. And I am familiar with the Orion Township litigation, and that one was settled. It did not resolve the issue of the First Amendment. That's a very important key to note, that the issue on First Amendment, quite frankly, potentially is still on the table for litigation. They probably dismissed it with prejudice, and so the parties can't come back and litigate it, so that probably holds it. But that doesn't mean that another community could not litigate that issue with respect to litter. So I think most people know, I am a strong advocate of the First Amendment. I've been a First Amendment advocate here on council, watched some videos, I've issued some opinions, and so when I feel a tread, a walking towards something that may infringe on my ability, on my property, to read material, I have a problem. I don't care if it's got a pink bag on it. I don't care if it's wrapped in green. I don't care if it's thrown on my driveway or in my yard. I don't care. Because I've got a work ethic. I'll bend over and I'll pick it up if it bothers me. But I want information. I want to hear what that advertiser is saying. I want to hear what that Girl Scout troop is saying. So I see this more as a restriction for me. So I can't support anything like this. I mean, I'm only one person on council. I'm probably the only person on council that thinks like this, and I'm the only one that will be voting no. But I have issues when government begins to interfere with my ability to read materials that are coming onto my private property. We're not talking about regulating litter and trash out there on Pontiac Trail or at City Hall. I mean, you're talking about regulating it as it comes to my house, what I am able to read. So if somebody's working on a political campaign and they want to go out and distribute literature, and their campaign coordinators have said, we don't want you touching people's property, we definitely don't want you going to somebody's door, try to put it on a mailbox or try to find it someplace by a garage or something like that, and does not fit these criteria here. You're now going to subject that political material and that person who is out canvassing for a political candidate to, well, you didn't put it in the door, you didn't check to see if it was open, you didn't attach it to the door, you didn't put it on the porch. So therefore, your campaign literature cannot come onto this property. There's your lawsuit right there. Political material is protected. You can't stop it. But that's just me. But I won't be voting for this. I won't be participating in any drafting or approval of any ordinance of this matter. Thank you.
Councilmember Dillon, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. For one, I hate seeing these things, but I hear what Councilmember Kurzweil is saying. I personally would like to see an ordinance written putting into, thinking about the things that Paul has said and the other communities have done. What can we do? Is there something we can do with our ordinance that, one, gets our residents to I've been complained to several times about this placement of this, but also not restricting, not running into these First Amendment issues. Is there somewhere that we can say, that if you're going to put unsolicited materials, that there has to be a contact number, like there is for political information. You have to say, this is, who paid for this or whatever, and it has to have an address or whatever. Is there something like that we could write into an ordinance that says if you're going to have this material, you have to have some kind of contact information, so that if I pick up this pink bag for the 12th time, I can call somebody and say, please stop bringing this to my house. So that's what I'd like to see. I'm in favor of seeing what we can come up with for an ordinance that is not going to restrict First Amendment, but also will help us with this issue.
Councilmember Kimball, go ahead.
I think the other thing that's important is that none of this is going to be triggered unless somebody files a complaint to act on it. So if you want to see Girl Scout stuff in your front yard, you're not going to end up calling City Hall to say, we need to get somebody over here to intervene on this.
But somebody might.
Somebody will.
Councilmember Kennedy, go ahead.
Well, I think a number of the comments that have come up are very valid, and I think we could look at, that's where we kind of fine-tune an ordinance once it's drafted to identify those instances where we want to allow something like this or not like this, and so forth. But you need a framework within which to begin that process. And so I'd like to approve the city staff and attorney to create an ordinance addressing the unsolicited delivery of written materials in the city of South Lyon, probably something similar to what city attorney Hamame's firm has done previously. And then we can look at, what needs to be tweaked as far as the ordinance is to fit our particular needs. As Councilmember Kivel said, it's not to restrict the delivery, delivering this particular document. It's to control the manner in which it is delivered. If you look at the pictures with these packages strewn in the middle of streets, on right-of-ways, these aren't on anybody's property. So I guess at this point, the city would have had to call to stop the delivery. I'm not sure how they do that. We just, they call and say, don't put them on the street anymore. There's in the street in its entirety, since there's no particular address for any one of these. But this is what has been done to the city by whoever is delivering this, and the city deserves better treatment than this, as do the residents in this city. And I think the ordinance probably provides a framework for us to look at dealing with that. I'm not looking for something like this to be heavy-handed, but I am looking for somebody to be put on notice that you want to deliver these things, that's all well and good, not restricting free speech whatsoever, but you can securely attach this thing to the flag on a mailbox with a rubber band, or you can attach it to the handle on the door, whatever the case might be. But when it's strewn throughout the neighborhood in littering like this, and that's what it is, nobody's rushing out there to grab those packages to see what they contain, and they were out there for quite some time. I think we need that kind of a framework to enforce this. And so I would make that motion.
Councilmember Dill?
I just wanted to be clear with the motion is just to write the ordinance, and then it comes back to us to review, right? I'll second that. Further discussion?
We have a motion by Councilmember Kennedy, supported by Councilmember Dilg. Is there any further discussion? Councilmember Kurtzwell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I know this is Mr. Kennedy's suggestion. He had talked about this at a prior meeting, I think maybe about a year ago. And the thing about it is, once again, the city manager is correct, is that littering the streets with information is not a basis for restricting free speech. If we look at, well, where lately have we seen a lot of litter? Well, Ottawa, Canada. If you look at all the litter in the streets with the free speech on the signs there, that's freedom of speech. The signs and the litter that were produced in Minneapolis or Seattle, that's free speech. And with free speech and what people say in those materials, there is going to come some inconvenience to individuals. Not everybody wants to listen to the message, but that's not what free speech is about. It's not about telling you what you can and cannot listen to. And that's my problem. I don't want government interfering with my ability to look at something, to read something, to maybe get a point of view that I didn't have before. And to say, well, the streets are littered. You know, I was talking to a couple of people about this, and they said, well, the solution's so simple, so simple. Bend over, pick it up, and throw it in the trash. It's so simple. So I'm just not for the nanny state. I think we're old enough as adults, if you got trash in your yard, in your street, it bothers you, go out there and pick it up. I pick up garbage all the time. But don't tell me that I can't read something. If that literature had been of a political candidate, and we had some pictures that were handed out, had been of a political candidate that somebody did not like, here are the pictures. In fact, I'd almost kind of like to have these pictures put in the record, if we could. I don't know, but what the procedure would be for that, so that we can actually see what's being talked about. And here I see one on an apron, one on a driveway. There's another one on a driveway in a street. What would happen if that literature was Joe Biden, Hillary Clinton? Should we just pick it up and turn them in because it's free speech? It's got a candidate's name on it? Why? Pick it up. You don't like it? Throw it away. But I don't want government telling me what I can and cannot read on my private property. And that's what this is doing. It's not about the street. It's about what you can deliver to my private property. That's what this is all about. And you can't disguise it under the ruse of litter and trash, because we know what's going on. It's the regulation of speech. But that's just me. But I want to thank my council members for being patient with my soapbox tonight.
Councilmember Dill, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would just finally like to say that I don't think that writing this ordinance necessarily means that it's going to restrict something. I would love to see an ordinance written so that we can talk about it that could say what recourse does a resident have if this keeps happening to them. I have a couple neighbors that cannot bend over and pick up garbage and throw it away. So am I going to run around the neighborhood and clean up for them? There needs to be some recourse. And if there's a piece of material from Joe Biden that keeps getting thrown in my garbage, I'm going to look for or in my street, I'm going to look for the phone number, who's paying for this, so I can say, stop sending this to me. And I've done that before. So I'd like to see an ordinance written that can maybe address this, that has some recourse for residents, that says, if you're going to leave this, it has to have some kind of contact information, something. I'm not a lawyer, but that's what I'd like to look at. I don't think merely writing an ordinance and bringing it back to us is a need to have a First Amendment fight at this point. I think that once we see the ordinance, we can decide from there. Thank you.
Councilmember Hanson, go ahead.
I wanted to make a personal observation as far as these sorts of materials that are delivered. Yes, it's very easy for one to simply pick it up, put it in the recycling bin, and have the paper just recycled. But what I've seen over the course of seeing this sort of material delivered in a neighborhood is you have folks leave it on their driveway, leave it in front of their house. And as it gets rainy and people drive over it, it slowly just deteriorates into this glob of like wet paper that is an eyesore and is just, it's trash. And the residents had never requested the coupons or whatever solicitation to be delivered. And out of an abundance of having to pick it up constantly, week after week after week, eventually they just get sick and tired of dealing with it because it keeps getting delivered without their asking. So it's one of those things where having some sort of a ordinance or at least stipulation as far as where it can be delivered, I think would be something that, we should certainly explore and look at. So, thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Johansson. Councilmember Kibble.
Random stuff distributed, random coupons distributed is an easy one.